Hi everyone. Hope you're well. Hope you're enjoying the weather. Currently it's very cold, but those are the pains of winter. But yeah, hope you're all doing well. Hope you're looking after yourselves, keeping yourselves safe. We're in new times and strange times, but just look after yourself, your well-being, as we always say, and just enjoy life. As you're probably wondering where the others are, we're all very busy at this moment in time, so I've stepped in to give you guys some content to listen to, but as always, I'll be carrying the presence of the others with me, so you won't be missing out anything. And I guess talking about the others, we've got a great guest today. So as always, I don't want to bore you guys with details about them. I want you guys to hear from the listener, from our speaker, and really, I guess, learn more about them. So I'm going to hand over to Sherry. So Sherry, please, could you just introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yeah, hi everybody, and thank you for listening. My name's Sherry Brogan. I'm currently a trainee solicitor at a human rights firm. I'm also holding the Miss England title of Miss Middlesbrough and Miss North East Popularity. And I'm also a Miss Intercontinental finalist as well. So for those of you who don't know, pageants are basically about charity work, but they're not just they used to be in backdated times about just aesthetics. And I think that, through time and through, people listening and feminism and women's rights movements, pageants have now become more about, getting involved in the community. And part of community and part of that charity work also draws in from my human rights experience as a trainee and also in a past life as a paralegal. So that's a bit about me and what I do.
Wow, thank you. And I guess for me, it kind of feels like I'm surrounded by a celebrity. Sherry's doing charity work. She's doing loads of good things. She's literally in a pageant going for Miss Intercontinental. I kind of feel like I'm sort of out of my depths here. But thank you again, Sherry, for being on the podcast. We really appreciate it. And as always, I know this conversation is going to be a great one. We're going to dive into it with our first official question of the episode. So our first question is, I know you briefly touched about it before, that you're involved in a lot of activism and social justice work. And we just want to know what got you interested, in this area. Was it, a particular story that you heard or, something in your personal life, anything like that? We just want to know what got you interested.
Yeah, so my mum had me when she was very young. She was 15, and she did a lot of work with a charity called Bernardo's. Bernardo's charity, for those of you who don't know, help women and girls that have been exploited a lot of the time, or children, that are also vulnerable to exploitation. And I think Bernardo's is a great children's charity that, it promotes the livelihood and the prospects of, it kind of takes a village to raise a child, rather than just, the parents being the people that do that. So I know Bernardo's work with a lot of children that have been in the care system as well. When I was growing up, we did experience poverty and we were a little bit disadvantaged. My mum didn't get to finish school and go get a good job, etc. So we did experience food poverty to some extent. And that kind of got me involved with certain charities that I was a beneficiary of. Now, as I got older, my mum always taught me, even if you have nothing, still give what you can. And I think that really, resonates with me today, because there's a lot of people that you see that are very, in vulnerable positions, they're not privileged, and they're still doing the best they can in the community to kind of be the glue that holds the society together, really. And when I was 14, I started with a charity called NCS. Many of you might have taken part in National Citizenship Service. It is a government-run charity that helps 15 to 17-year-olds. They take them on residentials, outward-bound activities, and then the third and the fourth week, they plan, it's a little bit like Duke of Edinburgh, but then they go and plan a social action project in their community. And some of them, I started out as a young person, then I became a volunteer and then a team leader. And some of these action projects in the community consisted of, renovating care homes, helping out at palliative care centres, decorating homeless hostels. In one of the care homes, we actually built a tuck shop because a lot of the patients there had dementia and couldn't go to the shop like they usually would for their morning paper. So we made one in the garden for them so that they could still experience that, despite the fact that they were now lacking capacity and they had a range of other health issues. And I just think, these types of giving back to your community, whether it's to, elderly people, people with disabilities, or other people with vulnerabilities like homeless people or exploited teens, these are things that we need to do and, come together to try and, combat poverty, inequality and injustice.
That's so true. And yeah, first off, I guess what I want to say is, yeah, I totally agree. I've worked with through like volunteering myself, and I know my sister volunteered with Bernardo's before. They are a great charity, and I recommend that people do genuinely check them out. They do amazing work. But yeah, I can also say NTS. I did it myself. It is truly, like you said, a life-changing and really a great thing. I know, when it comes to I guess, stuff that you can do over the summer, especially for anyone, I guess you might not necessarily have a holiday planned or anything like that. I would definitely recommend it. I know myself. So like you were saying, there is that 3-week program. So for anyone wondering, that first week, we went up a mountain. We did like adventurous stuff, I guess more like your Duke of Edinburgh type of stuff. The second week, we were like on a university campus, and it was more, just, I guess, learning about becoming an adult and what that would be like. We got to stay overnight, which was really cool. And then the third week, like you said, was this charity work. And I know our group was focused on people with, like you said, like dementia or Alzheimer's, and we had to do a drama piece about it. And I know, I didn't mind it because I love doing drama, but I know that for a lot of people, it generally was, quite life-changing, because we had to go to a care home with people that suffered from, dementia and Alzheimer's, and, speaking to them, I guess like what people say, some of the things that they remember is generally just like so interesting. You've got people, there were people there, who remembered, what it was like living in London during World War II. There were people there that remembered what it was like being in the 60s and the fun they had in the 60s. So genuinely, it was just like such a awe-inspiring experience. And I think you're right. It's clear that, having that experience, your whole life journey has led you to where you are. And I think that's perfect. And finally, to address, like you said, giving back to the community. I think that's something that, people always feel like they have to do, big gestures, whether that's, donating money to a charity or building, a monument or like a play center or things like that. But no, doing like what you said, like just volunteering, spending time, whether it's with a charity. I know, for example, Mary Curie did a lot of volunteering. I know Gosh, so for anyone who doesn't know what Gosh is, Great Ormond Street Hospital, I know they have volunteers in. My sister's been volunteering with them for a long time. She loves doing it. And yeah, just simple things like that are a great way to give back to the community. And it's always great, to do something like that, because it's sort of, I guess it's probably the same for you, Sherry, but it makes you humble. You give back. You see, how someone, I guess, one little thing, whether it's a conversation, a smile, even if it's just, I don't know, helping someone to move out of their house or bring stuff into their house. Little actions generally can change someone's complete life. And yeah, I think you've highlighted that perfectly for our audience. So yeah, thank you very much, Sherry. And we'll now go on to the next question. So for our next question, I think I would be lying if I didn't say that the area that you specialize in, activism and social justice, those words haven't been thrown around, especially in the last year. I know for the last couple of years, it's built up, whether it's with climate change or with, Black Lives Matter. But I think this last year has definitely seen a huge increase in that. And our question to you, Sherry, is how does activism and social justice influence the world around us?
Oh, that is a difficult question, but I think activism and social justice, it can be found in every kind of aspect of, well, whether it's work. So let's take, for example, you go to work. Now, somebody, campaigned and there were activists just so women could get equal pay. And I know my firm in particular is still fighting for that to this day, with their equal pay claims. And then you've got to think about the fact that there's racial inequality in the workplace. Or you might think about, even just something as simple as this bottle of water, the plastics, where that came from, the fact that, it could damage the environment, the fact that, even where it's sourced, somebody's home or habitat could have been, affected. If you look at the diesel emissions claims at the moment, how corporations are taking advantage, of the system and, kind of deceiving people by using cheat devices. All of these things, impact the world around us, and they're, influencing our daily lives, especially because we live as consumers in a society that is, based on, monetary value. And I think, in terms of social justice and activism today, you've got the Black Lives Matter movement, which is quite topical at the moment. You've got the women's rights, the Me Too movement, which was quite topical since the tragedy of Sarah Everard and other women and girls. It's quite it's a very high topic, and something that's, really sticks with me at this moment in time is, the environmental effects that fast fashion is having on Black and brown women across the world. Because, like I said, it can affect, the places that they live in terms of pollution to their farming, their livestock, that kind of thing. It can have devastating impacts in terms of like mining and, children being exploited. If you've looked at, the Congo campaign, the Congo's Bleeding campaign. You've also got women in like India who are being exploited because of working conditions. So these are all the things, people talk about the environment, but they don't talk about it with the race factor. And they don't see that there's like intersectional issues within these structural concerns in the world. So I think that's something that we need to tap into, and we need to kind of divulge further into the conversations, because it's not just, there's not just kind of one intersectional way into solving these problems. It's looking at it from the point of view of all different types of people in different diverse societies as well.
No, that's completely true. And yeah, like you said, we can clearly see in our lives how activism and social justice, people who have been activists and, I guess people who've acted on, injustices around the world has clearly changed. Like you said, pay, for example, I know we're still going there with women getting fair pay, especially I know with previous speakers we've had on the podcast about, women in STEM, for example, is a big one. But like you said, that even the point where we are today, I know it's not perfect, but the point where we are today has only been able because of the work of activists and those who have been tackling these injustices. Even, like you said, with workplaces, there's I've forgotten the term off the top of my head, but there's the characteristics, that people can't be discriminated on. So whether it's, their sexual orientation or their gender or,
protected
that's it, protected characteristics. And yeah, that is now established. If someone is fired because of one of those, I think it's 7 in total, but if they're fired for any of those reasons, they are liable to take up their workplace, for that. And that, is great, because it's shown the work that, activists have done to enable that to happen. Like you said, clearly, and I know I said it towards the start of this question, like you said, with the murder of George Floyd and others in America, with all the things that happened with Sarah Everard, and, in general, especially I know in the news recently, there's been a lot of stories on, whether it's drinks being dosed at clubs or, women being essentially harmed in clubs. And yeah, it's only the work of activists that will get us there. And as an environmentalist, I can definitely agree with you that, a lot of the things with climate change, with policies, I know literally COP26 has just ended, but a lot of the stuff there has only been able to happen through climate activists. But I think one key thing that I want to say before we go into the next question is I really do like that you did raise that race is definitely something that needs to be considered, especially when it comes to, environmentalism. I've said it before and I'll keep saying it. I know, there'll be a picture of it in the corner for everyone, I guess, watching. But there was that picture of a group of environmental activists that went to a conference. I think it was in 2019. Greta was there, and I don't remember the person's name. I think her name was Vanessa. I think it was Vanessa. But she essentially went to this climate conference, and Greta was there, and three other like climate activists were all there, and newspapers. I don't know if it was all newspapers, but I think some newspapers cropped out this Black environmental activist. Now she didn't know about it. You know, she stood there, she took the photo, and it became a thing because people were saying, no, you know, you can't just be like, oh, look at these great environmentalists, and you're excluding like a particular person, and that is a key thing, that race definitely, when it comes to, you know, environmentalism or, you know, climate change or tackling climate change or other injustices worldwide, that race is a huge factor, and it's definitely something that needs to be tackled in the future. But yeah, that nicely leads us on to talking about, you know, our next question, which is, where can individuals go to get accurate information? I feel like in this world, you know, today, it's very easy to see something on the internet and for individuals, it's easy to take it as fact. You know, you see something, even if it's from a reliable source, you know, you might be like, this person is my, I don't know, go-to person on Instagram when it comes to information, or, you know, I only trust information from this source. And in this day and age, it's very easy for us to, you know, assume that things we're seeing on Instagram are fact, or the things we see on certain websites are fact. But it's all about, like we keep saying, about accurate information and knowing that these sources, you know, are telling things that are true. And I know, before we go into this question, I know that Instagram has that thing about like COVID-19 and highlighting, you know, to get more information. But I guess, Sherry, we just want to ask you, where can we go to get accurate information about social justice issues?
So it's interesting that you're asking me this, because I think for our generation especially, activism and social justice does occur online a lot, and it's our main platform. We live in a globalized society. You know, technology is at our fingertips, and if we want to get, and I think, you know, as much as a tragedy as it was, I don't think what happened with George Floyd would have got the momentum if it wasn't for social media. And so, you know, it's a very similar situation during the civil rights movement with, you know, TV. And the fact that it spread so much in the north of the States rather than the south because of, you know, radio, television, the fact that it was getting shown on what was happening, and people were, you know, traumatized and absolutely horrified about what was going on in the rest of the world. But then when it comes to, you know, it happening like in real life, maybe you just don't have your phone out at that specific time, or, you know, maybe bystander apathy comes into play, social diffusion of responsibility. Nobody wants to step in and actually, you know, do anything. But online, it's very easy for us to stand behind a screen and, you know, promote it, press a button, share it. And it's getting the movement, I think, and the momentum from that to real life change and, you know, putting petitions out. But as you said, where can we, you know, what social media sources can we follow? And I think even Google, you know, or Instagram have their own, as you mentioned, algorithms, which obviously affect what appears on the news and things. Like, I know myself with the situation in Palestine, you know, there was a lot that was happening and it wasn't being shown on, you know, the Google News section at all. But then if you go on other, you know, kind of search engines, it was shown straight away. I think there was like DuckDuckGo or something was showing things, but Google wasn't. So I think it's very difficult to, you know, be a source of information and signpost people. But I tend to go for things like the UN kind of reports that are published, because what happens, and, you know, this is why I kind of got some of my information about women human rights defenders and the environment. It's so hard for, you know, the governments to know what's happening unless you've got these grassroots movements that are on the ground. And, you know, in terms of reliability of sources, when there's enough people saying it, that's when you know it's reliable. So if you've got, you know, 3 or 4 different grassroots movements making these reports to the UN, and that's getting published in, I don't know, annual, I think it's every 4 years, But if, for that treaty, if it's getting published as this is what the country needs to improve on, that's kind of a reliable source. Or other is like Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch. These are charities that are very well known. They don't really have so much bias. I'm not going to say there's none, because I think in every organisation there will be an element. But I think because of the fact that there's so many countries that have invested interest into it, it's quite difficult, and they're quite regulated and checked. But yeah, I think it's quite difficult to find sources, but as long as things are a registered charity and they're in a position of accountability where people can hold them responsible for misinformation, I think that's the safest bet and the way to go forward with getting your sources on human rights data.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true, and I think that's what you said. Is that sense of accountability is definitely needed, whether it's by individuals, because I know some people do only check out sources if they're big influencers that they watch on Instagram, share it on their story or whatever, or if their favorite TV show talks about it. But yeah, I think like you said, it's just that accountability. There's a video, and I'll try and see if we can attach it into the episode. But there's a video by Denzel Washington where he was saying that like news reporters are so important when it comes to getting accurate information out. And I think, like you said, with this digital age that we're now in, there's a tendency for people to be like, I have to be the first one, to release this. I don't have to be necessarily accurate. I just need to be the person that says, hey, look, we found out this information from this person about this. And it's like, well, yeah, but is it true? And then even if it's turned out not to be true, there's less of a, oh, we're sorry. We know we said, this happened. And we just wanted to let you all know that actually, this wasn't the case. It was our fault. There's less of that, taking on accountability. And I think, like you said, checking out sources like the United Nations, Amnesty International, these are sources, like you said, that are vetted. They do, go through the process, and there's a lot of work that goes into the reports that they come out with. Even I know for climate change, for example, there's the Interpanel on Climate Change, so the IPCC, which released loads of reports. I know a lot of the reports that the UN talks about if we get 1.5 degree rising, this is what it means. And they do if the UN's used it, a lot of governments have used it, because they, it's just facts. It's not fiction. It's just saying, look, this is the details. But yeah, I think you're right. It's just, checking these sources. And always, I guess, I mean, I'm not saying conspiracy theorists out here, I'm a conspiracy theorist or anything, but I'm saying it's always just be careful with, especially I feel like with what you see on Instagram, just be careful with what you see. Don't necessarily take it at face value. If you see, I don't know, whether if it's a news place, yes, there are reliable news sources. Like for myself, I normally check out the BBC, mainly because they just do it in like a easy to understand way. But again, there are some news sources that, people online that do post things that aren't necessarily accurate. So just always just be careful, with what you see, even if it's like, I know for me, sometimes I just see, when I'm in the explore section on Instagram, I'll just see something and I'll be like, wait a minute, is this true? And then I'll look up and they'll say, actually, no, people have been just like making fake videos or saying things that aren't true and stuff like that. Even people as a career on YouTube, their whole job is just going out here making fake videos for us as individuals to believe. So yeah, just always be careful, where you get your information. Just make sure, if you see something, whether it's in the news or other things that, if other people are reporting it, like Sherry said, then it's more likely, I guess, to be from a place of honesty. Now we go on to a bit of a hopeful, I guess, more hopeful question. Sherry, we just want to ask you, what are your hopes for the world? I know that's a big question, because there's a lot going on in the world, especially right now, and there's a lot to be, I guess, hopeful for. But I guess if you could give us your top 3 hopes for the world, Sherry, or if you've got one overarching one, we'll take that too.
I mean, I have to be realistic with this question, because I'm sure we'd all love to see, food poverty end, poverty in general end, and world peace. But in terms of, in my lifetime and realistic prospects of, what I want to see, it's definitely, racial and gender equality. I think that's two things, obviously, as a woman of colour, that I can really be passionate about, and it resonates with me. As a mixed race person especially, I've seen racism from kind of both sides, and people, obviously there's, issue about that. It's a bit controversial, like, can reverse racism exist and things, but I think, maybe not structurally, but it can personally, maybe if it's, maybe racial discrimination is a better term than racism, but yeah, so it can affect me. Obviously, as a woman who's also mixed race, being like fetishized, or having kind of men disrespect you in nightclubs and kind of push their boundaries without consent, that kind of thing. So I'd like that to change in my lifetime, realistically. I think in terms of, another thing that I would like to change is more support in the legal system, more funding in the legal system. As somebody that works with bereaved families, vulnerable clients, there's not enough funding to support them. They have to go through a lot of checks just in order to secure some funding to be represented, or, for us to investigate a case that, they're victims of, or, they should get compensation for. And I think if that could change, or if even just the government systems offered more funding to people in vulnerable situations without putting them through a hell of a lot through forms and bureaucracy just to kind of get benefits, so that they can, our food banks at the moment are, they're skyrocketed. Like the usage of them and the need for them, and really it's the government passing the baton on their responsibility, because we should have a right to food. Technically we do have a right to food. It's not in our domestic legislation, but it is in international treaties, like international social and cultural rights. Them kind of UN documents do say that we have a right to food, a right to housing, but that's not kind of shown properly with the level of homelessness and the amount of food banks that's in this country at the moment, which is really upsetting. So yeah, they're my two main ones. And then I think obviously my passion for the environment. If we could, as a generation, and this is my hope actually, because I see it more every day. I see people, switching feminine hygiene products. I see people opting for a bus. I see the buses changing. I see electric cars. This is all hopeful things that are happening. People are switching and using, more environmentally friendly sources, especially going plant-based as well in their diets. So that's hopeful for me, I guess.
No, that's great, and fingers crossed to all these things happening. But I think, like you said, they are, these are changes that we are seeing in our lifetime, and especially with, I think, like you said, with climate change, it's something that, even though some people might not necessarily agree, it's going to affect us all. I know as a team, we've joked about it before, that people going to space, space is technically not an option. But yeah, I think you're right. Climate change is something that we're seeing technological, social even advances daily, and that's something that we can see that. And I think that's a key point that you raise there, because if we can see that change, in climate change, we're seeing policies being made to reduce the amount of CO2 in areas. We're seeing even local councils saying that you can't have engines on near schools because you're releasing CO2 near the school, and things like that clearly show that we can make quick changes with other things, and it's just about accepting the responsibility of we're not going to be the generation that's known for letting this go. I think that someone said that about climate change. We don't want to be known as the last generation that could have done something but didn't. We want to be known as the first generation that actually made a change and helped the environment. And I know one of the best examples that I heard in class was back in the 80s, and people can look this up. There was a hole in the ozone layer, and that essentially came from just stuff in fridges that were being dumped in landfills. And within the space of, I think, like less than a decade, like policies were made worldwide and everyone stopped using it, and that hole in the ozone is now fixed. It's okay. So that shows that, you know, like we can, when you know, I guess push comes to shove, we can make these changes. And I feel like you were right that we just need to keep pushing, keep being hopeful, and, you know, we'll see these changes in our lifetime, hopefully. Now to our last question to you, Sherry. And as always, it's been a great talk. I've enjoyed, you know, hearing a lot about you and, you know, learning about the work that you do. But our question to you is a bit of a personal one. We want to know who inspires you to promote activism and social justice.
Actually, you know, this might be a good time. I actually wrote a poem about this. So could you just give me a pause so that I can go and get it and I'll read it out to you?
Yeah, no worries. So everyone, Sherry's back. She's got her poem, and I'm waiting in anticipation, as I'm sure you are, to listen to this poem.
It's called Role Models, actually, and I'm going to start it now. So, but how could I say just one name when there are hundreds in the Hall of Fame? Role models making the world smile, spreading positivity for a little while. I ask for a moment that you can bear. Queens of human rights I share. This person is my number one. You may understand and call her mum. The sacrifice every mother makes and holds our world up, oh, what it takes. From your womb I grew and you bore fruits, blossoming now, but remember your roots. A girl burdened, a mum, just aged 16, but you made sure I didn't go without a bean. So thank you, my role model, for fighting strong and remaining each day my number one. And next I'll talk about another star. From the Middle East, she travelled far, standing up for education around the globe. Her bravery and strength given us hope. Malala Yousafzai is her name, say it loudly. A role model for all, support her proudly. Another woman I wish to give a mention. It's Amal Clooney, so please pay attention. For the vulnerable, she continues to fight to recognise justice, equality, and what's right. A lawyer and activist shaping unity, an inspirational addition to the global community. That brings me to our future, the next generation, a young person trying to gift our planet with liberation. Remember her name, it's Greta Thunberg, raising awareness about the melting icebergs. Climate change, the wildlife, everything dear, may be gone if we don't change, she says with fear. Be mindful, don't wasteful, stop supporting fast fashion. A fire in her heart spreads the word with passion. And these women are all my inspirations, but there's more in my mind, God's creations. We all have the potential to spread goodness around, to stand up for the rights and love we have found. So be the best version of yourself that you can be. Your own role model, and watch the world change, you'll see.
Wow. Now, let me just say, I just want to start off with two things. There will be a round of applause back because that poem is beautiful. I'm going to start off and say that poem was beautiful. And it's beautiful for two reasons. One, all the people that you mentioned there are, you know, they are clear inspirations, and they have done miraculous work. I'm sure, like you know, we started off with mums. I know I love my mum. She had, even my dad, you know, they've both done amazing work. Our parents and siblings can be such a huge help, and just a reminder, I guess, to keep going when it comes to our dreams and to keep following them. Malala, like you said, I mean, her story, if anyone, again, has not heard her story, please do check it out. It is an inspiration. You know, she had to go through so much, but she has done so much and she has done amazing work. And that work is going to impact not only, you know, this current generation, but generations to come. You know, and I think, you know, we can see that you're very passionate about the environment, and to bring it whole circle with Greta Thunberg as well. You know, talking about all the work she's done. I know in COP26 she was there. She was dancing on stage. She was singing. She was in the crowd. She was with everyone. She was getting it on, enjoying it. But also she was also there on stage, you know, telling politicians to get serious about climate change. And I think, you know, at her age, I mean, I know I wasn't doing that, but you know, it's great to see that someone is doing that. But the second reason why that's great is I know I write poems myself, and I know there are words that are hard to rhyme, but I feel like you did an amazing job, because some of them I was just like, I don't know if I can do it, but you did it, and you did a great job. So yeah, thank you very much for that. That was a beautiful poem. I guess before we end this question, we'll because I know you know, for people listening, they might want to go back or even see it. So I guess we just want to check: would your poem be on your Instagram page if it's not there already?
Yeah, I mean, I can do a post, I can pop something together on Canva and, put it on there. I might even just add it to the caption if you send me the artwork for this. Or maybe if you add a picture as a collaboration and I can accept, and then you can put it in the caption if you want.
Yes, please. Because I know that poem was beautiful. And I guess for anyone who's, even looking, who is an activist or does social justice work, they might want to look back and just, see, I heard this amazing poem by Sherry. I just want to look back and see the motivation there. But yeah, no, honestly, thank you so much for that. And I'm sure our listeners loved it as much as I did. We've come on to our newly added segment where we get our guest speakers to ask us a question. Now, Sherry, I'm going to hand over, I'm going to put myself in the hot seat, hand over the mic to you per se. And if you could just please ask me the question that you've prepared for me today.
Yeah, so I think I asked you if you think activism and social justice is still necessary in the society we live today. And obviously we've had a long conversation about that. But I think, for you personally, your personal experiences, what would you say about it?
So yeah, that's first off, great question. I think yes is the answer. Like without a doubt, 100%, it is definitely needed. Like you said, we've highlighted it before, but the key message is that we still have a long way to go, whether it's racial issues regarding gender, even just, I guess, the way we as a society works. We have a lot of things that we need to change. And that work is not going to happen if there isn't work of activists or works of social people involved in social justice work. There's so many things around the world that have changed. We've literally even seen changes within the last couple of years. Not even the last couple of years. Even if we go to just literally between last year and this year, like we said, with all the Black Lives Matter movement, not only in America, but in the UK and internationally as well. We've seen changes within organizations. We've seen a lot more of a pressing need for representation of people of color in different fields. And I feel like, as a person of color, it's something that I'm happy to see. But I say this all the time, I don't want it to just be a company tells me that, hey, we're going to, focus on developing, allowing people of color within our organization to develop or, create spaces. And then it's just a word of mouth and there's no action. I want to see action and I want to, see it happen. And if it doesn't happen, I want to know why it's not happening. So I feel like, yes, it is definitely needed. There will be, 100 years ago, there were different issues than what we're going through now. And there were activists there. There's activists now. And who knows, in 100 years, there'll probably still be activists, doing work, whether it's climate change or something else, you never know. But yeah, I think there will always be a need for activists and for people who advocate for, for social justice, because, it's a sad thing to think about, but it's a thing that hopefully we can work on as a society. There will always be a group that will be underrepresented, whether it's to do with the race, like you said before about wealth, whether it's to do with, I guess, perception, some people, I should say, rather than people in general, can't believe that, poverty is or homelessness is such a bad issue in the UK. There are people that can only imagine this happens abroad, but then you tell them the statistics about it in the UK and they're just like, that can't be the case. But no, honestly, it's one of those things that I think that it will be, as long as there's injustices in the world, there will always be a need for activists to do work and social justice to happen. So personally, I would say, definitely there will always be a need for them.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. And, in terms of our current climate and the situation right now, I think our generation is doing it, just like the generations before us, but they're doing it with more momentum, given the fact that we are so interconnected, we are so on top of technology, and we're able to touch areas of the world that we've never been able to, go to before, just at the click of our fingertips. So I think that really helps us with, trying to promote this activism as well.
No, that's so true. And even like you said, touching areas of the world that we couldn't reach before. There are indigenous communities that they were going through issues, and it wasn't, it might have been highlighted within that country, but worldwide, if you ask the average person, they probably wouldn't know about it. So I think that's one of the key things that, like you said, this digital age, with anything, it's come with its benefits, come with its risks. But that is one of the great benefits, that we are able to see, people talking about Indigenous communities, whether it's in America or in Australia or New Zealand, or even in Africa, who are at risk, who need work and need help and need people to raise awareness about it. And that's one of the blessings of social media. We can show people what's going on. Like you said, what happened with George Floyd, I think, impacted the world so much because of what happened, because people saw it. I know that a lot of people spoke about it, but there's one person that I think that just it hit home, was Dave Chappelle, and he was talking about what was happening. Like he described it. He did a whole comedy special on, it was called I think it was 8 minutes and something. It was the time that the video was, and he went through it, and it as a Black person, that hurt, because that's something that we go through every day. But having social media allowed it to have the impact that it did. There was no, I know even to this day, there are people that that people still argue that racism doesn't exist. But when you see something like that, and you hear about it, and even not only the murder of George Floyd, the many afterwards, and even the ones afterwards, just clearly highlighted that the issue. And I think that would have never happened if social media didn't exist. So yeah. No, thank you.
And I think what you're saying, because obviously you're a Black person, you're part of that community, and it hits home for you. And I think obviously we can be allies in that circumstance, but there's such a nuanced approach even within the BAME community that we have to understand our positionality and the contextualization of how you can help, because me as like a mixed race Asian woman, it's a very different scenario for you as a Black man. So I think being able to understand and still have these nuanced conversations amongst ourselves, to be kind of, we get it because we have similar experiences, but they're also very different. And I think that's what's important, especially being an ally in your activism. And I think being an ally in your activism is something that you should try and practice on social media if you're going to get involved in that kind of conversation and that sort of narrative.
100%. And even like you said about, being an ally, like you said, I don't understand personally the issues. I might understand it through, my siblings or my mum, but I will never understand the things that women go through because I'm not a woman. And like you said, just being an ally, you don't, and I think that can sometimes be the reason why people don't get involved, is because they're just like, if there's a protest about Black Lives Matter, I'm not Black, so I shouldn't be there. Or if there's, a women's protest, I shouldn't go there because I'm not a woman. But no, it's about having those conversations. Even if you're not a part of if you're not Black or part of that race, or you're a part of, that gender group, you don't have to feel like you can't, get involved. If you see it's wrong, you should go out there and, whether it's protest or you want to post something about social media in agreement that, I disagree with the way women are being treated and things like that, that's fine. But don't feel like you can't get involved. And I think, I've talked about a show for forever on this podcast because it's an amazing show. Blackish, I recommend anyone who hasn't watched it, do check it out. It's incredibly funny. But that is one of the things that they talk about in one of the episodes is literally, so the main character is a Black man in America who works at this marketing firm. And one of the things that he wanted to do was talk about the talk. So for not only like Black people, but mainly people of color, there's always that talk, of people, as a young child, you might be like, why do I don't know, get followed around, if I'm a Black person and I go to a store? Or why is it that, I get all these uneasy looks if I go to a certain place? And there's always that talk. Now, in Blackish, the person wanted to do something within his marketing firm about talking about, the talk. and he's working his firm that he works in is majority white. So he had to try and make them see it the way that he did, and that he just spoke to them, had conversations. The woman, there was a white woman who worked in his workplace. He spoke to her about I guess how she feels as being one of the only women in that workplace. He found it a bit hard with his colleague who is really rich and basically owns half of the firm. But he still found a way, and it's just people just being able to empathize. You might not necessarily be a black person or be a woman or be a person of color in general, but that you can empathize and be like, I can see that this is wrong. The way that this person's looking or the comments that this person is saying is clearly wrong. So I think, I'm going to say, no, actually, that's not what I agree with. And, they're not, and I know we're just about to go into the MC of the Month section, but they're not the MC of the Month. But I was lucky enough, as a part of Brunel Student Union, they hosted like bystander training for all the different societies on campus. And it was basically talking about, how can we as individuals ensure that, whether it's racism, sexism, even ageism or anything, any discrimination of any sort, how can we just make sure that this doesn't happen? And, there were a lot of key resources there. I do think it would be great if Brunel, whether it's student union or the university, made these resources available. But one of the key things that they said is, depending on the situation and depending where it is, there's four different steps you can do. It was like, you can diffuse the situation, you can like delegate, you can, I don't remember the other two, but I'll put them on the screen as well, and I'll put a link there as well. But yeah, one of the key things, it highlighted that. And, there were scenarios that we were asked about. There was one about, if you're seeing people like a black person or a person of color and someone who isn't a person of color talking about race, and you're seeing it, it's becoming a really loud conversation. What do you do? And people are asked, people said this is what they would do. And it's only through things like that we'll learn, having these conversations. We've said it before that, it's just about having that space to talk, and making it clear that just you can talk about it, and I think that's one of the things that came up from last year, after everything that happened with the the murder of George Floyd, even during the trial. I know that was one of the things that I know friends and families, workplaces were being conscious of. When it happened, they were saying, if you want to talk about it, the space is open. You can talk to certain individuals. But yeah, just having that is always a good thing. So yeah, whether that's you as a person who isn't a part of that group, you want to make sure that you're an ally and you're always there if the person wants to talk about something. But yeah, just always do that. And I guess one last TV show I'll mention before we end. Well, before we go to the MC of the Month, is Brooklyn Nine-Nine. It's another show. If you haven't watched it, I love it. It's so funny. But their last season addresses like everything that's happened in the last year with COVID and Black Lives Matter, and everything that's happened in America. It does it in an amazing way. And one of the reasons why I recommend that people watch it is because there is, like, without, I guess, going into too much detail, they do address, like, how do you, as someone who isn't a part of that group, how do I support the group? There was one person who's a part of the team in Brooklyn Nine-Nine, who was, trying his best, but was being a bit too, I guess, enthusiastic is the best way to describe it. And once you watch the episode, you'll know what I mean. But yeah, honestly, at the end of the episode, they have a discussion about it, and he says, hey, I appreciate what you're doing, but just, I just need you to be aware that, these are things that currently go on in America, and these are things that I want to, this is what I want to change. And I need, if you want to support me, that's fine, but these are the steps that you should take, and these are the steps that you shouldn't take. But yeah, I would definitely recommend, it's the 8th season. So, I mean, I'd recommend watching all of it. It's great. But yeah, I definitely recommend that 8th season just addresses everything that we've talked about today in such a perfect way. And now that nicely leads us on to our MC of the Month section. So yeah, we've named a lot of organizations for today's episode, and we've briefly touched upon today's MC, which is Black Lives Matter. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, Black Lives Matter was founded in 2013. It was founded in response to the acquittal of Trayvon Martin's murderer. So for anyone who doesn't know about what happened with Trayvon Martin, please, again, do look it up. It was a very tragic thing. And yeah, it impacted a lot of things, for Black Americans, but also worldwide. It brought up things of whether it was Stephen Lawrence, Damilola Taylor, who were both Black people who were stabbed and killed in the UK, and there's a whole host, and it brought a lot of discussions of that. Now, they're an international organization. They've got a network in the UK, the US, and Canada, and their mission is to build local power, eradicate this idea of white supremacy or, white power, I guess. And they want to help build local power to intervene in violence inflicted, on Black communities by in America, this is specifically but by states and for vigilantes that, take action to their own hand. They want to combat, and counter these acts of violence and create space for, Black, they've put on their website, and I think it's beautiful, Black imagination and innovation and centering Black joy. We are winning immediate improvements in our lives. And they've done a whole host of work. There have been the protests over the last year, both in America and in the UK, but internationally, like we said before, around the world. And yeah, they've just done great work. But I do want to highlight, even though they're the MC we've picked for this episode, there are a whole host, and sometimes I do like to have two. But I would say in general, just any organization that's doing work for this, when there was special, I know it was both in the UK and in America. I know friends who suffered Asian hate. They were from Asia, and people just like, they were giving them weird looks or angry with them because they were saying, you brought Corona over here. We're wearing masks and have to get vaccines all because of you. And she was just like, well, that's not the case. And yeah, these organizations that do these work, they're just amazing. And I want to just say that even though we are talking specifically about Black Lives Matter for this episode, any one of them could have been because they, like I said, the work that they do is just great. And I think it's really key and important that, like we've raised here, being an ally. I know there were people who who I know friends who were at Black Lives Matter protests, but were also, there when there were protests about the way that Asian people were being treated in both the UK and America. I know that there were celebrities that were out for both, even if they weren't Asian or they weren't Black, they were out still protesting. And I think, yeah, that's a key MC for the month. So Black Lives Matter is our main one, but any organization, any individual who's an ally, anyone who does work like Sherry or whether it's activism or social justice work, you are MCs of the month. We thank you all for the work that you're doing. You're doing great work, and yeah, keep up the good work. But yeah, we've now officially come to the end of the episode. And first off, I want to say thank you, Sherry. This has been an amazing episode. I'm sure our listeners have enjoyed learning a lot about you. I'm sure I've definitely enjoyed it, learning more about your journey, who you are. Now, two things before we go that I'd like to just ask. So obviously you said at the start, you're going for Miss Intercontinental. And I guess for any of our listeners who might be listening, how can they, go out of their way to support you?
I guess for Miss Intercontinental, there's not really a public vote like the Miss England competition. There is one on, I think it's a kind of like a little bit of fun between the contestants. I think they cost about $1. But at the moment, I'm just saying, because I'm quite late into the contest for Miss Intercontinental, I'm just saying, follow on social media. I'm on Twitter. I think I'm Shereen Brogan on Twitter, Cher Brogan on Instagram. You can follow me on Facebook. I've got a fan page for my pageant stuff on Facebook, and that's Shereen Brogan as well. So yeah, you can follow me on all of them things, share things that I'm getting involved with. I'm also raising money at the moment for Women's Aid, and that's part of my Miss Intercontinental journey. For those of you who don't know, Women's Aid, fight against domestic abuse and support victims that have experienced domestic violence. So yeah, if anyone wanted to donate, the link is in my bio in Instagram. So just things like that, really, and sharing, posting, liking, that kind of thing.
Yeah, you all heard it here. So please do go and support Sherry. She's, like I've said, she's doing amazing work. We are proud of all the work that you're doing. We thank you for all the work that you're doing. And yeah, we look forward to seeing, where this journey goes for you. Wish you all the best. Fingers crossed. We've got our fingers crossed for you for Miss Intercontinental. And who knows, later it might be Miss World or Miss Universe later down the line. So, just I guess if you do get that far, just remember humble beginnings. We've been supporting you from the start. But honestly, thank you so much for the discussion today. Thank you to all our listeners. Please, if you did enjoy the episode, we always love seeing you guys liking, subscribing to the videos. And yeah, feel free to check out our Patreon page for some more exclusive content coming your way. But that's a bye from me. And yeah, wishing you all the best, everyone. So take care.